Hello, and welcome to the Three Peak Master Leadership Experience. My name is Mino Vlahos, and I'm joined by Krisanna Locke. Alongside with Dr. Mazen Harab, we are the co-founders of Three Peak Coaching and Solutions, where master leaders build healthy systems. Our company provides coaching and workshops to executive leaders and leadership and well-being workshops to employees. Our topic for today is the power and magic of our intuition. And we're going to be having a fun conversation, just exploring different elements of intuition. And I have to admit that when I first kind of started working in the working world, that I had a big bias against intuition. I actually got in trouble at work because of this. And I'll give a little story, and then we're going to dive into the topic. One of my jobs was to assess leaders. So essentially in the hiring process, I would do a 4-hour deep dive interview to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses were, and then recommend if they should get hired. And, we all have different biases of what we think is good and bad. And one of the things that kept popping up for me that my bosses kept flagging is that I kept rating people with intuition in my training period as lower than people who had a more analytical, data-driven kind of perspective. And at that time, I myself was really in my head, very analytical. I thought like the only thing that's real is like logic and data, and that this intuition thing is just all BS. It's all bullshit. And they had to really sit me down and explain to me the science of intuition, of why intuition is important and helps us. And then I got to meet Krisanna, and I also got to meet Mazen, who's not here with us today. And in working with Krisanna, it started to open me up to this world of intuition. And the irony is I came to realize that some of our biggest superpowers are through our intuition. Some of the most crazy, wild things I've experienced in my life is through intuition. Some of the best solutions I have ever seen for people in their personal development and people in their professional development when it comes to running companies has come through intuition. And so today we're going to explore this beautiful, wild world of intuition. And I'll share a little bit about my journey, but we're going to get to speak with an absolute master of intuition, which is Krisanna. And so, Krisanna, I want to just start by asking, what is intuition from your perspective? How would you start to talk about this amazing facet of being human?
This amazing facet of being human. Well, intuition is based on, for me, on a feeling rather than a conscious reasoning. So it's like bypassing, you don't go through this detailed process of reasoning, and it's almost a sixth sense, and it's intrinsic inside. So everybody has intuition, but they've forgotten they've had it because it's a lot of rationalizing through what's right through the mind. So intuition is an innate ability inside of all of us, and we may have forgotten to trust it. And there's ways to connect back to it. That's intuition for me. It's not from the mind. It's more of a feeling. It's a sixth sense. It's connected to, really deeply connected, being connected with more of a being space inside of you.
And in my kind of work with myself, or with other people, I also notice that for some, there's an instinct that can happen. It's in the moment. It's like something happens and I immediately react. What do you feel like might be a difference between an instinct and intuition?
Well, an instinct for me is then it's coming from a body reaction, and you have an instinctive to jump out of the way because there's a snake, or there's a dog that you all of a sudden sense that this could be dangerous if I'm walking past it, not because of your own fears, because there's something that's got an animal to go into a more aggressive space. So for me, this is more on your instincts, on coming from your nervous system. So instinct to perform is that. And intuition is something deeper, where when you're deeply connected with yourself, that you tune in and you say, but what I sense, that for me is from it's usually when you're not stressed and when you tune in deeply to your inner self and you feel into that, then there's an impulse that what I sense, what I feel, this is more comes from that intuition. So it's a inner knowing, but it's not an inner knowing from here. It's from inside. It's more very instinctive, deeper than mind and body. So we're going deeper into the aspect of being, of the deep connection, the intrinsic wisdom that's inside of us.
Hmm. And I know when I was younger and I was really in my head, like what I can say now is at that time I was making a lot of choices I thought were quote unquote logical, but a lot of the choices had a lot of like consequences or side effects or things that weren't really that great for me. And then over the last 8+ years, as I moved into making more decisions based on my intuition, sometimes I don't even understand where I'm going because it's not from the head. But those decisions have tended to be very beneficial for me and my life, but without a lot of the negative consequences that came when I was making decisions from my mind. Do you have any insight into why that might be? Why the mind can create these kind of negative uh, consequences, but like when I follow my intuition, my soul, like things tend to kind of work out?
Mm. Yes. So when we function from the mind, and when we also want to have an outcome, a success on the outside. So what is happening is, if we follow that, how to be successful, what we're doing, we're looking at success is an external achievement. But intuition, where you said, when I follow my intuition, I have really positive outcomes for yourself, that's an internal success. So you're starting to follow your bliss, you're starting to follow your happiness. It will take you on a different journey that's not from A to B logical, but you may not have the success that looks like that the world says you should have, but you have an inner success because you'll be happy, you'll be blissful. Your life will be more relaxed and at ease because you followed your impulses. You will see it time and time and again when people have said, I'm making this decision, and they've made it from the mind, and they said, I have to do it, I must do it, and it's done very quickly. And then later, when the outcome doesn't happen, usually they go, oh, should have listened. There was this impulse inside of me. There was something that I didn't listen to, and that would have been the right way. So it's really to do with starting to trust that, or how to connect into that trust to the inner self, to the inner sensing first. But we do get the insight when something goes wrong, and we do sense this, but I did have from an inner a knowing that I should have gone this way, or do not even should go this way, but the should says do it like this.
And what I've come to believe, I'm not saying it's necessarily true, but what I've seen in my career is that, you know, our instinct can be really powerful when it comes to jumping out of the way of a snake. And those are moments where when I've had moments where instinct has taken over my body, and it's yeah, helped me tremendously to be safe. And I also know there's moments in my life where, because my instinct was wrapped up with my conditioning, my emotions, my history, my culture, that when I kind of operate on instinct sometimes with other humans, that sometimes it doesn't always serve me fully, because I might be jumping to conclusions, or I might have, like I said, bias in how I'm kind of observing the other if I go just on pure instinct, because I'm just
Yeah.
kind of going through this coupling from like something I probably picked up as a kid or my culture. But intuition feels a little bit different. So I'm thinking of an example. We recently were working with someone who runs an organization and runs a lot of employees. And what they were sharing is that actually, when I was doing the hiring, I now realized that my intuition was telling me not to hire certain people. and it's turned out that they're not the right fit after a few months now. But I also know that sometimes when we operate on instinct in hiring, we can end up hiring a lot of our buddies or people similar to us or not understand. So, like, one of the reasons we know that women can have discrimination in hiring is if men just go on instinct, they'll just hire a buddy that looks and feels like them. And so, this is
Mm,
one of the ways where it's important to draw the distinction between like that instinct and that kind of real rooted intuition.
mm. It's really wise how you said the real rooted intuition. So basically, for me, instinct, when we say it's an instinctive move that I want to hire this person, and then basically it's coming from association because there's something you like about them, they will fit into the role, it's going to work for me. But um, intuitively, that's not instinctive. That's more conditioning and associations. Um, Intuitive for me in business is because I have a huge intuitive capacity because all my work is a lot of my experiential work with people is also it's methodical, it has methods, but on the basis it's purely what has opened up is very instinctive, but it's not some fantasy that I'm pulling together. It's a whole lot of sensing and understanding. So in the case of hiring someone who's right for the role, who would fit the role, but there's an inner sensing of intuitively may not work for the company, which I have sensed. It's not a bias to the person. It's not a bias against anything. It's just an inner sensing of seeing a little bit into the future, the foreground and the sides, and understanding maybe how on maybe how it would not fit on other dimensions, but they fit the role. But then you can sense in late, or I'm picking up late. I'm picking up maybe they're saying yes, but they have other positions they've already applied to, and they're going to fit them more. So they will go for those ones. So it's a very intuitive. I trust this. I trust this to feel into that, but I I will not create a definite outcome. Sometimes I will sit with it. So this is how I can say about intuitive and instinct. I would say instinctiveness. You will see indigenous people, they are very connected to their instincts and to their senses and and to the earth and to their healing, their possibilities of to communicate with their body, communicate to the earth, to be instinctive with their environment. So they're so alive in their bodies. So for me, this is instinct. This is um, primal instinct, but they're still connected with it. Their emotional intelligence may be different to ours, but they still have an emotional intelligence. Uh, they're not rationalizing so much and coming out of ego for a gain, for success with other people. But I see those people are really tapped into instinct and intuition and respect, and they're probably not so much looking for success in the outer world, but they're very much in tune with what keeps their culture alive, to maintain their tribe or the people they're with. So I have a different way of seeing what instinct is, what intuition is, and with the mind. But intuition is something that we all can tap into when we find the way.
And I believe what we're starting to see in the quote unquote Western world, I never know what the right way to but Europe, United States, Australia, um, descendants of the European project.
Mm.
There's this kind of idea, which is it's a belief system that the only way to lead is through data. And in different parts of the world, for instance, in Japan, the conception, the idea of how you lead is very different. So in Japan, leadership is considered an intuitive art. So they lead from the gut and they train that. And that is their model for how to lead. But in the United States, in Europe, what you see is that we need these very quote unquote logical leaders. And what I believe we're starting to see in the last few years, and we're going to probably see it accelerate even more, is what I call the failure of big data. So there was this
Mm.
big promise that if we can measure everything, if we could have data on everything, we'd be able to make way better decisions and manage everything even more. And what we're finding is that the more we collect data, the more we even analyze the data, the more we embed AI, that across the board, we're recognizing there's still massive gaps in how to run organizations and make decisions. I mean, data is incredible, but we need to understand how to use it as a tool. So I always say that data is the language of the present and the language of the past, because you can say what happened in the past by measuring it. So you can look in your bank account and see what statements you had from 10 months ago, and you can see what you have in your bank account right now. Anytime we try to project forward with numbers, we have to make a model, and models can have utility. They can start to show things and patterns, and some of them are quite sophisticated. But ultimately, it's a projection based on certain
Mm.
assumptions. And what we see in the research, so you can look at research done by Nassim Taleb, um, we notice that when we engage in a lot of strategic forecasting and numerical forecasting, not only is it almost always wrong, but it actually increases negative consequences to the business. You start to see companies actually, because they have this certainty that because we have some kind of numbers about the future, they start to act out in kind of weird ways. One of which is they start to potentially take on more risk and make riskier bets because they have so much certainty, alleged certainty about what's going to happen in the future. Another one is you could actually become way too conservative because you think you know what's going to happen in the future. And ultimately, they're not responsive to the environments. I think strategic planning is wonderful. I think data is wonderful. I will never say not collect the information, but to use it to make decisions, we need to understand how. And when we do a lot of this forecasting, we end up making very poor decisions, is what the research has shown us. So the way I think about data is that it's good to get as much data as you can to see possibilities. But ultimately, at the end of the day, how do you really make a decision? Almost always, then at the very end, a leader ends up becoming intuitive anyways,
Mm.
because data will never give you a clear cut direction to go in, a clear cut decision to make. Some of these decisions that these leaders are making, CEOs of big companies, they've never had to make them before. And they're so unique to the context, they'll never make them again. And so no data on the planet will show you what the decision should be. In the very end, you can collect all the data you want, but at some point you have to go based off of some feeling.
Mm.
And when we don't train that, or kind of the way I talk about it is kind of decluttering our kind of insides, we have all these associations, all these couplings, all this conditioning from the past. We have fear about this, anger about that, guilt, hope. Then our intuition can get a little bit cloudy. And then it's actually hard to make very rooted, clear decisions based on the information we have. And so, Chrisana, when I came to you and I started working with you in a personal development context, I was that person. I was so in my head. I was super heady. And, uh, I tried to make the quote unquote logical decisions. I was trying to measure everything in my life. I was trying to forecast like all the things that actually companies do. I was trying to do the company of one called Mino, and it was failing. And then I went on this tremendous journey alongside you and Mazen and did a lot of personal development. How do you support someone that's kind of so in their head to kind of remember the intuition and the system of intuition within themselves?
How would I support someone who's so in their head to remember intuition? I would not get them to remember intuition because they're still in the head. So a lot about is a balancing, coming. There's data and analyzing and being more analytical thinking is wonderful, beautiful. There's aspects to think, is to be able to think deeply is a beautiful, beautiful process and art. But if you stay in it all the time, then you lose the capability of how do I stop thinking and being analytical and drop down into the body and into the heart. So of course, with my work, the pathway is through the body, is connecting to different aspects of ourselves. So it's connecting with the body and connecting with the heart and the perspective of the heart and how we access the intuition of the heart and through the body. So I use experiences of active meditations or exercises, grounding work, or things to do with the work of bioenergetics, the great work of Wilhelm Reich, because a lot of my work is his foundational work of the life energy in the body and the emotional intelligence and everything that's alive in there. So it's really from thought to into relaxing into the body and listening to its messages. So when I would work with, I would support people, not even talking about that as bringing them into these structures, where bringing them into the body, finding access, like they don't even have to look for their messages. They start to communicate from the body and receive these messages, and the capacity of a clarity of the sensing of sensitivity through the heart starts opening as well. It's not about can I feel my heart. This just starts opening more, where there's more a sense of being empathetic, like the empathy that you start having to the world or to yourself, or you soften, you soften, and you open more, and you start to see your life from a different perspective, not the perspective of reality of AI thinking, but the perspective through the heart, through life. So that's the way.
And so we're going to be, in a second, moving to talking a little bit about the outer world. Right now, we're talking about the inner world, which is a beautiful starting place for intuition. And a couple of things I wanted to share was, I think, many people we interact with, a common question on an individual basis is like, what is my purpose in life? And I'll just share what I have found personally is that the more I try to solve it with the mind, the more I get the totally like the wrong answer, or like I end up going into this weird spiral. And even the last few weeks, I feel like I have been in kind of an existential crisis. And because I have done all this work with you, instead of trying to solve it with my mind, I swear to you, what I did is I went somewhere where I was alone for a weekend, and I just sat in a chair for 2 days and did nothing. No phone, no distractions, no TV, no reading, no people, nothing. And I would switch, sometimes I would switch the chair just to mix it up. But for 2 days, I just sat there and I didn't think at all. I just felt and felt and felt this kind of angst within me. And what came up was that there's like two things I was searching for in that existential crisis. It is, what is my role in society? Like, what is my position? What is the thing I'm here meant to do? So I define that as my role in a kind of professional capacity and personal capacity. How am I in service of this project called Earth? And the other one was like, what is my direction? So where would I like to kind of go with my life? And what I found, because I've done so much work with you and Mazen, is that I was like, I'm never going to solve this with my brain in the mindy way, with the data and the and the thinking. And so I'm just sat for 2 days. And what I can say at the end of the 2 days, I pretty much had 80 to 90% of the answer that I needed. And it was basically just going off of feeling and like what feels good, like what feels good for me, and what do I want to do that feels nice, and just tapping into that intuition. And so a lot of times when I talk about in the professional sense, people are like, what's my purpose? Purpose is a construct. Someone made that word up, and what they said is that you're going to have a big goal in this life and it's going to feel very meaningful. So it's goal plus meaning. And I've tried to rewrite that for myself because that never suited me, and it always actually created more pressure, and it's something that kind of messed me up on the inside. So instead, I do ask myself what feels meaningful, but it feels meaningful. So what is intuitively going to feel meaningful as a next step? And then instead of goal, I try to direct myself. I have an intention. So I have some way I want to walk through the world, but I don't have anything I want to get out of it. There's no outcome anymore. There's no goal. It's just more a way to direct my energy and my creativity and what feels meaningful. And that's a little bit of what I find works for me. And the more I ask people to tap into that, the easier I find that they enjoy and navigate their life.
Totally, totally. Yes, because people, when they say I really have no purpose, I don't know what my purpose is. I should have a purpose, and they're trying to find this from the mind. I do say to them, "Hey, what are you passionate about?" And then someone has to step back in and say, what am I passionate about? What gives me joy? What excites me? What motivates me? And there you can find there's some patterns. There's some patterns, that reoccurring moments where in your life where you see that there are patterns coming up that have given you joy, that drive you, that give you a creative expression. So finding, and if you don't know, it's to go for people to go out and find what are you passionate about, what do you enjoy, or what did you enjoy, and discover. So rediscovering, not discover, but rediscovering what's already you've discovered, and then you'll find from there. So the inner purpose, the external construct, what we've created of purpose, and the internal organization we have inside is purpose with me of having self-possession of myself. How do I organize myself in the day internally, So it's not like I organize, but how do I organize myself to move out in life? So what motivates me to get out in the day to do my work, and what gives me an organization of myself, self-possession in the morning, is going out in nature, no matter where. You've probably even seen me, Mina, when we're working in different countries on in a consulting, and I'm out already in the morning, walking, going to be by myself. People would call it self-reflection, but it's just this innate for me that this is what I enjoy to do in the morning. It organizes me, and then I have time to reflect. And then there's a sense of me I've met myself, and I'm ready to meet the day, and I'm ready to meet people in my work. So you would call this having an inner how do I organize myself? How do I have self-possession? This is something that also a lot of people don't have, and it's learning how, through tools, through different structures, how I can have that capacity to know who I am, where I am internally and outside, and where my life is going. So this is an inner purpose I would share in my world of how to express it.
Yes. And so now we shift a little bit to one of the definitions of intuition. I think there's many, and there's so many facets to it. So to me, this feels very incomplete. But when I was going through that training, and I was basically really messing up and got a lot of, thankfully, feedback. I had a lot of bias against intuition. One of the ways they explained the power of intuition to me is that as humans, we have this incredible capacity to sense patterns, and we're able to do it at lightning speed. And so, one of the examples they gave me at the time, which really stuck with me, now many years later, is that when you walk in the room and you see someone has their back turned to you and their arms are crossed and they refuse to look at you, you might sense very quickly that this person is upset. And you may have, on the first arrival as a human into this planet, you may not have understood that the first time or the second time. By the 10th time, you could start to sense that actually this is a signal or a cue that this person is upset. And rather than going through this like very long cognitive process to think and break down each step, over time, our intuition can instantly just sense, wow, this person is upset. And so this like really rapid pattern recognition is really supportive for us to take in insane amounts of information from the environment. And so now we're turning a little bit to intuition as sensing. And I know for me personally, like it's something that I developed as a child. You know, I grew up in a very hot Mediterranean family, a lot of emotions. Those emotions would change. There was kind of that kind of sometimes feeling of kind of chaoticness. And what I really honed in on was, without knowing, it wasn't like my mind directed me this way, but I could feel in my environment the moment there was any shift in another person. Like I can sense it from a mile away of like, oh, this person's upset, happy, this, that. I can even do it with groups of people. Like I'm able to really extend my feeling outward. And and so I've noticed that like that's one of our superpowers is we're able to kind of sense what's going on. And then beyond that, you can even there's so many stories. Like I have personal friends, or you hear it on the news a lot, where someone might be, let's say, going about their day, and all of a sudden something hits them where they feel really unwell, and like either sick or fear or danger, and they change something in their routine or their pattern. There's a pattern interrupt. They follow the feeling, and then later it's revealed that they were in danger. There was someone who meant to cause them harm. Like I have a personal friend who was able to sense that they were in danger and just started screaming. They didn't understand why. They just started screaming, and it turned out that they were in danger, and they were able to get help without anyone ever understanding consciously, cognitively, or see the danger in front of them. So there's something that we're able to pick up when it comes to sensing and sensing other people. So I'd love to hear from you, Chrisana, your understanding of like how we do this and the kind of this power of sensing that we have when it comes to the environment, people, and understanding what's happening around us.
Mm-hmm. So, what you were just sharing then, I would say a lot of it is observation. So, I know through meditation for myself, meditation at the basis of any method is witnessing. And so this really develops a keen sense of observing. So you're observing your outer world, you're very observant. And I know in my work, I'm very observant. And as you said, you can sense through other people, you can sense in the room. So you really can pick up on sensing emotional energy. You know, people, when you are having an emotion, when you are in a fear or anger, or when you're joyful, people do pick that up. You sense that. You can sense. You can feel that. You can feel the atmosphere. So some people can really be sensitive to that, and you can pick that up emotionally. And also probably because you have quite a big emotional sensing. And then, so you can also have keen observation that's been developed through meditation. Then you can also sense emotions. And then there's also sensing danger. I know that's inbuilt into the reptilian part of our brain for survival that just goes on like the antenna that's always on in our nervous system, sensing, is everything okay temperature wise. That's regulating all the time. And I do believe we are tapped in, that we do have an instinctive sensing when we do know there is danger, like, oh, I might not go down this street. We already get an inner sensing, I'm going to walk the other way, and we we're not in danger anymore. There's a premonition to that, but it's coming through our body. It's not coming through our brain, through our mind. So some people have the capacity to develop sensing in different areas emotionally and also instinctively, and also everyone can develop and cultivate witnessing and observing, because this is at the basis, it is awareness. When we are working, that's a lot open in me, is because even if when someone comes into the door, opens the door, comes to sit down, I can kind of pick up what mood they're in or what's happening to them, because just the way they open the door, the way they come in, the way they sit down, the way their body language is, it's also indicating, are they in a stressful state? If just breathing patterns, you can pick up very easily how they are without judging them, but you're already in a sensing, okay, where this person is at this moment, and how to choose to support a meeting or a consulting with a team or with a person. So the more that you tap into your body and into your feelings and into your senses, you have the ability to be able to be more present and to observe and sense without making judgments, and not to judge what has happened, to be having a broader view and capacity to see the whole picture. You as the subject and you as the observer of what's happening outside, and also really looking at the reality that's happening. This is the way I can share it right now.
Yeah. I'm wondering, and this is my scientific mind active. So like that kind of premonition kind of element we talked about, and again, there's just so much kind of evidence and data out there and anecdotal experience about this kind of capacity to sense things, even if we don't see it with our eyes. And I'll give a personal example, which has really stayed with me. Is the first time I met you, and we were doing a 1 week meditation in Florida, and we were out on this ranch in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, we had a lot
Oh,
of fun. And it was when I was starting to really open up to my more intuitive side and feeling my body for the first time. And I always like to take walks at night. That was where I really could kind of clear my head and process a lot of the crazy stuff we were doing throughout the day. And I remember one night, I was so distinctive because there was no moon, so it was like very dark, and I think it was also cloudy, and it was like pitch black. Uh, which, funny enough, I always think about, because I think there's a meditation technique that happens during that confluence of events. But I decided to take a walk in this like ranch in the middle of Florida, and I was walking for like an hour and a half, and on the way back to the place we were staying, I couldn't see anything, like all I could do is almost like feel the road ahead of me a bit, and just try to stumble along. And at some point I was just walking and lost in thought. And somehow my body, like it was like my body tore itself from where it was standing and jumped like 2 yards, 2 meters backwards. And like it was like I was possessed, and my mind was really confused. And like I've never had such an involuntary kind of reaction before, and I couldn't understand what just happened. And so I had a cell phone with me with a camera, and so I turned the flashlight on, and like where I was about to step, there was this black snake, and it was actually twirling. It was doing this like circular, like almost like dance. And I remember just being so awestruck. And there's more to the story I could share, which is not relevant to this episode. But I just in that moment was like, I don't understand how, without seeing this snake, my body would know how to jump 2 meters backwards. Or like a friend who didn't know, but like screamed out loud and had people rush into a room and realize there was someone hiding and intending harm, that they didn't see them, but they
wow.
knew somehow that this person was there, and the body screamed. And so I'm wondering, this capacity for kind of premonition, for sensing, for reacting, like what is that? I actually have no clue. What is happening? How is that possible?
Mm. Okay, when you were out in on the ranch in that nature, and this is probably happening on the third day, we had done a lot of active meditations, self-inquiry work, breath work. So you were really much more alive in your body. You were much more connected with your body, very grounded. and you were out for a walk in the night, meeting the darkness, being all with one, totally open and live. And yeah, you tune into nature, you tune into the nature worlds, and you sensed it. You sensed yourself with the snake. This is what has happened. I just know this because I grew up in Australia, so this huge capacity. Whenever you go back to Australia, it's like it's inbuilt. Check your shoes. If you're out in the bush, not in the city, but you're out somewhere, and then if you go to put your shoes on, you just know, check, there could be one of those deadly spiders in there, but there's no threat. There's this inner sensing. There's nature. So the more you're in nature, the more also you build up the capacity for intuition and these instincts and sensing to come on. For your friend who screamed when they came into their room, they know the patterns of their room. They know that room that they go into every day. They know consciously when they walk into the room, there's certain patterns, how they open the door, where they place things. Everything that we have created in our room has an energetic signature. Even if no one wants to understand what energy is, where we put our things, where we orientate, how, our kitchen. So they were probably already sensing that someone has come in and disturbed, has moved something, or just the way coming in, there was an inner sensing that something is different in this room, and sensed them to do the best thing that they could. Was it's not right, and their body supported them, their fight flight, their I'm in danger, survival, and screamed and saved them of an outcome that they don't even have to go into what if, but that was a direct experience of supporting themselves in that moment.
Yes. And so one of the things we'll return to again and again is that the sheer volume of information we can process through the senses is absolutely awesome and incredible. And it's something that if we tried to do it with our analytical mind, we actually do not have the capacity to do it.
Mm.
The supercomputers we've built do not have the capacity to do it. AI that we have right now does not have the capacity to do it. The human body and brain developed over millions of years to take in vast, vast amounts of information. So, one of the things I know we do in the United States, a bit of a ritual, is when you get into university, you go visit the campuses and you figure out where you want to go to school. And I actually think it's such a beautiful ritual because these schools, they're in different locations, they have different programs, they have different graduation rates, different job placement. So you could really just sit there and go very analytically and say, the place I should go is the one that has the best metrics, the best statistics. And yet it's one of the areas of life in the United States where, typically speaking, there's this ritual we have of you have to go visit. And when you go there, you start to sense what it would be like to go to school there. And I remember when I was doing my university visits, I ended up picking between two very different schools. One was the University of Michigan, which is in a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous campus, but it's really like more like suburbia. So you have these kind of like there's buildings, but around the buildings there's like more grass. There's a lot of community feeling. There's like sports there, but there's not that much. And the other one was New York University, NYU, in the heart of Manhattan. And those were my two choices, were kind of polar opposites, is like be in this kind of very enclosed grass community thing, or be in the heart of New York, kind of totally by yourself. And I went and I visited, and I just felt it. And at the time, I couldn't tell you why, but I knew intuitively I want to go to NYU. I want to go and live in Manhattan. Now, much later, now that I understand myself and have more self-awareness, I understand why that happened. But at the
Mm.
time, I didn't need to know why. I just needed to feel it and see, what feels good to me. And what felt good was to be in New York City. I now know that what I was choosing was a sense of independence, stimulation, cultural kind of multiculturalism and diversity, like things that really supported my journey. And at that time, I can say now in hindsight, I didn't know how to process my emotions. And
Mm.
if I had gone into this other community, which is beautiful, and like I think now who I am today, I would have loved, if right now I
Mm.
had to go back for a master's or something, I would love to go to Michigan. But at that time, because I couldn't regulate my emotions, I didn't know how to have independence, healthy independence. So I was very much enmeshed in these community systems. I absolutely guarantee I would have gone there. I would have gotten super like enmeshed in some kind of like fraternity or some kind of like student group. I wouldn't have built any independence. I wouldn't have been able to stand on my 2 feet as an adult. They have heavy drinking cultures. I probably would have gone into a very negative place with like unable to cope with my emotions and drinking way too much alcohol in this enmeshed system. Whereas like in New York, I also had different challenges, but it was ultimately, I still stand, it's like definitely the right choice for my journey and who I needed to become. And that happened only because of feeling. And now I can sit here and analyze it for you and break it down. But in the moment where I chose it, I didn't think at all. I actually could just say, I feel like doing this. I feel like doing that because the body took in so much information. And if you think about traveling to another country, when we experience a different culture, you can read about it in a book, right? You can read about the French in a book and what they like to eat, the music, their cultural practices. It's something very different to go to Paris and to just be there and to just feel it. And what I've noticed, because I've had the benefit and joy of traveling around the world a lot, is that's my favorite thing to do, is just go to a place and just sit there and just feel. And I guarantee I could probably tell you more insights about that place within a few days of feeling than someone that read every book about what it's like to be there. There's something about experience and sensing and feeling that opens us up to intense volumes of information that we could never figure out through just the rational mind. Our body has this incredible ability. If you go to a busy bar and you're talking to a friend and it's really loud, you can still hear your friend. Your brain is able to filter that information, that auditory information, so you could still hear your friend and also kind of dim all of the other people around you. But I guarantee you, if someone says your name, all of a sudden you perk up and say, whoa, someone said my name on the other end of the bar. And so somehow your brain is able to do this incredible magic of listening to your friend, dimming the volume of the masses, but still understanding what's being filtered in. And if someone says your name, your whole system can orientate towards them and say, oh, now this other person's in our conversation. It's absolutely incredible what the body and brain can do and our intuition and sensing can do. And I think we really, maybe I'm just projecting, I really took it for granted. I was really very ignorant, and I think some of us in the more analytical frame who think we're very righteous with our data, we severely underestimate the just incredible input that we have. So when it comes to like team dynamics, culture, computers have no capability or capacity to get the amount of information that we do, that we are able to through our senses that developed to do this thing over millions of years. And so the more we start to talk about how to work with groups of people, teams of people, organizations as a whole, the more intuition becomes a valued asset and ally in our journey.
Yes, I totally agree. And a lot of the work we share and what I share with teams and working with people is experiencing, sensing, feeling. To have that capacity to go into that discovery again, so that you do, and we also open up more emotional intelligence, we open up grounding, we have a bigger capacity to feel pleasure, to feel joy. And I'm not saying consumption outside the body of what I'm consuming, to because I don't know what I feel, but the just sheer pleasure that I feel totally connected through experiencing, sensing, and feeling. And then and also the beautiful qualities of having great attributes of thinking is wonderful. But if that's all that, you're missing the body, you're missing to be able to embrace life, to be able to relate to people, to to find real sense of what fulfills you on a personal level as well. And you will feel more fulfilled in your profession or with your career when you bring in this experience in sensing and feeling. And it doesn't mean that now if someone, a listener's listening, is thinking, now with my next client I have to experience, sense and feel. No, it's something that it's a intrapersonal work that we do with oneself. And then also when we're working with people in companies or team, developing people or working with executives, group work, it's an inner experience that one has together. So outwardly, there's better communication, there's better follow through with processes, clarity of understanding, and motivation and higher outcomes. And sometimes they can't even work it out what happened. But if we break it down to that, it's a lot about coming back to the experiencing, sensing, feeling, emotional regulation, from too much doing, analyzing, to non-doing, so you can process and feel, reflect, all these things that come into what we both know that we love to share through our work. So yes, it's really important, because we're humans, we're not machines.
Yes. And of course, it's very obvious, but we developed as social creatures in social units. And I don't know if it's because we're just disconnected a bit from nature, but when you look at other animals, they have incredible capacities for the things we're talking about. And we sit here and consider ourselves kind of superior to them. But if they already have this kind of intuitive technologies, why would we not? So when we look at different like primate groups, they form social networks and social groups, and they're able to change roles. And I'll share a quick, it's a great documentary. I think it's called Chimp Empire, which I absolutely loved. I recommend anyone who's interested in just, I don't know, life to check it out. But there's two rival groups of chimps, and what they do is they actually organize their societies in different social structures. So one of them has a more what we would call like patriarchal structure, where it's like there's an alpha male, and then there's a chain of command amongst the males, and they're constantly fighting each other for position. And then you have the women who basically just nurse the babies. And then there's this like intense hierarchy. And then there's another tribe that's literally right next to them that they're competing like for food, and they have an egalitarian structure. So the women have roles, the males have roles. They all have jobs to do. When they fight, both sexes fight alongside each other, the males and the females. Whereas in the other one, only the males fight. Um, and so I'm like, what you see is like these primates, these chimps, they have really complex, interesting social structures. And when research was done around like even if there's like an orphan, because they have such malleable and flexible social structures, they're able to mitigate the effects of trauma and mitigate the effects of the psychological kind of impact of losing the parents. And humans, we can do that. We not only can do, but we do the same things. So we have this incredible sense of being able to rearrange our social structures to have intense kind of social connection. And so one thing that's really interesting amongst animals, to start to bridge into our next section, is when you look at birds or fish, they have this incredible capacity to be with each other. Like if you think about birds flying, and then all of a sudden this giant kind of beautiful like a massive birds changes directions and then changes directions, and or school of fish, they're able to change direction. And there's this incredible dance that almost occurs in the sky when you watch these birds. It's beautiful and fascinating. And the fascinating thing to me is that when scientists look at it, for all the beauty of science, they still cannot, with a study, prove how they do this. It's one of like the big mysteries in science is how are the birds and the fish able to move in these patterns? Because the speed at which they're moving is faster than that which the eye can perceive movement. And the shapes that they take is beyond the periphery many times of where they can see. So how do these birds change patterns and are able to fly in such beautiful formations and change directions when they cannot actually see the change. There must be some other way they're communicating, and it's not through sight. And so this is where I open up for one of the ways that we talk about this. This is one of the theories because there's no conclusive kind of study that can prove it analytically. But one of the theories, so that we operate many times on hypothesis theory, is this thing called the morphic field, which is this beautiful interrelated field of connection in which we can share information. And so I'm going to ask Krisanna, what do you kind of know about the morphic field, and what observations do you have? What would you like to share with us about this beautiful topic?
The morphic field. So Sheldon Drake, he did a lot of research on the morphic field. So if you've ever watched birds flying in this murmuring, or this how they move, and they all moving as a whole, because they're sensing. There's an inner sensing. They're picking up on the field. So there's a field that we're all picking up on. So it's a movement. It's an innate movement and sensing. We also have fields. We also have morphic fields that are resonating. So it's a resonance that happens in the family we're born in. So there's a field that happens. There's also fields of that start functioning at work. When you highly tune into the resonance, everyone knows their place but can move their place. So the birds know they're a bird and they're traveling together, but the field can pick up where, so the inner sensing where we've got to move, where one has to come in front. I know this because I've done a lot of sailing when I was younger, and I've done a lot of team sport sailing on boats, not with engines. And when we were sailing competitive, not out of the sense, of course, we have to win, sometimes we would just function as a team. I would be skippering, I would be with a crew of 3 other people in a boat, forward hand, and we had to function. We became the boat. So we weren't talking much, but we were all in tune to all of a sudden we hit the field. Because I was a skipper and I was navigating, following the winds, how you do as you skipper a boat, knowing the tides. Everyone had their position. Everyone was in tune. And we used to win a lot of races, and we did win a lot of championships. Once we're out of that, we were back on the shore. We were just we were in our own spaces. But the magic of that, if I'd had to try break it down when I was younger and doing it, it was just somehow we tuned in. So we were tuning into a field. This is what happens when, even in teams, even, when you have this teamwork, come on, let's make this work. There's this sensing that this field starts to resonate more and more. It happens in nature naturally. And we can go further on that on other topics about the morphic field and fields in other aspects of what we share in systemic work or constellation work. But it's an innate, you're one, but you're part of the whole.
You remind me of a story I heard from, I have a close friend who played competitive football, as we say in America, soccer. So, and what he was describing is that when he was really gelling with the team, he played defense. And what happened is in football, when you have this back line, what you try to do is you try to basically run and shift the back line so that the opposing team goes offsides. So if you can time it right when they kick the ball, you can basically pull the whole back line, and so the ball is offsides, and then it's the whistle, and then you switch the game around. And what he said is that when they developed this like deep sense of trust and camaraderie and teamwork, there's 4 guys on the back line, and they knew somewhere in their body when to pull the back line, when to all of a sudden switch from running towards the goalie to literally switching and going in the opposite direction, and they didn't like necessarily practice it. They didn't communicate it. There's no verbal or optical way for them to communicate that the back line was going to switch from running towards the goalie to running away to pull the back line. And yet, he said they got to the point where they were the best in their league at
Mm.
pulling the back line and causing an offsides. And they did it purely on intuition. They knew
Yeah.
exactly when their teammates, when the right moment for them to do it.
I get chills because I know what it is. It's, you say it's this inner timing, but what if I would switch it? It's an inner tuning. You all of a sudden you're in tune, you know. Uh, Sailing like tacking, so you had to be in the same balance, shifting sides, going out onto the trapeze wires. There's this balance, but we're all in tune. We're not just for myself. We're all working together, and just the sheer pleasure that's in tune together. So the morphic field is about everyone's in tune. There's a whole, there's an individual, but we're part of a whole, and how we move together, and how we sense that, and how we protect that, and how we serve that. So we move and we can travel together. So this is when you go out and when you do see birds flying and you see these patterns they're doing. It's so beautiful to see. They're so connected on a deeper level in this sensing way.
And so this is one of the mechanisms by which we share information and also
Mm.
store information, both inside and outside of ourselves. So if you look at intelligence, really cool, again, studies on intelligence, all biological organisms have capacity to store information. Some of them hold it just inside themselves, and some of them hold it on the other extreme in a collective. So if you think about an ant, on an individual basis, like an ant might be one of the quote unquote dumbest organisms on the planet. But when they come together as a unit, they do the most incredible things. You can see really cool videos online of them making bridges out of their bodies. They make these kind of floating balls if there's like a flood so that they can survive the flood. They're able to make incredible trails to and from food with pheromones. Their collective intelligence is incredibly high. On an individual basis, though, they're not that smart.
Mm.
And if you look at, like, for instance, like fungi, like there's incredible molds that when they ask them, like, when they not asked, but they put the mold and they basically put like a map of Tokyo, and the mold, when they put certain food sources around like nodes in the city, the mold actually went and created a more efficient metro system. It spread itself in a way that it actually was better than what the architects could design. So the mold's kind of collective intelligence, external intelligence is super high. Humans were somewhere in the middle when we've studied ourselves. So we have some knowledge inside ourselves, but we also hold information in each other. I
Mm.
mean, part of it is literally we write things down, like so we can, record something that someone else can read later. But part of it is also in this morphic field. And so we're not going to fully open this topic of
Mm.
constellation because that'll be the next episode we record, especially in the capacity of a CEO and a business constellation. But for now, I want to just ask, I know I've done a lot of, I've been the participant of many family constellations, which is, I know, one of the many gifts you have, Prasanna, is to facilitate this really incredible process. And something that has always struck me in these processes is that something might happen somewhere in a family or family system. And then that it's almost as if the knowledge of that, if it's not addressed, gets carried on and passed along in a system. And so we could actually sometimes, using this technology called Constellation, pinpoint the actual literal thing that's being passed along. Or sometimes we have a sense of what it could be, but it's so far up the chain that we don't, up the kind of family tree, we might not know exactly what happened. We have a sense of like, this is generally what happened. And I'm fascinated by this concept that we can actually pass information along in our family systems from generation to generation without even using words to say what happened to me or my grandfather or my great grandfather. Can you share a little bit about this kind of morphic field as it exists within families and how we're sharing information across generations, even if we're not telling stories about what
Mm.
happened?
Mm-hmm. So in any group, even in families or any group, everyone has a right to belong, whoever belongs to that group. So in a family system, whoever is born biologically into that system, I'll keep it simple for now, has a right to belong. They belong to that family system. And they come from other systems before them. So they also are born out of the system of the mother and father and the grandparents. So all that is remembered. So whoever belongs to the family system has a right to belong, will always have a place. And if sometimes there have been events or things that have been overwhelming, or early deaths, or there's been war, or there's been trauma, so at times, out of an unconscious love, a blind love, next generations will take on their burdens to remember them instead of remembering them, but they take on unconsciously, out of an unconscious act of belonging, their burdens or their fates or their transgenerational traumas. So when we look at family systems, we look at who's missing and who is not included, who has been forgotten, and how we can make a balance to the system so the system can come back more into a healing order. So it also is on laws of love and laws of natural hierarchy of who comes first, who comes last. So obviously, I'm the third child of 10, and I cannot say I'm the last. Would be strange, because I know there's a natural hierarchy of who comes first, who comes last in my family, and I cannot disrespect that order. When we start disrespecting these orders, then somehow things can get messed up, or we've not also acknowledged past fates and burdens, and also brought healing. So that's just a little bit about constellations, family systems, and it also works in another way in systemically in organizations and systems and teams, and it's a lot to do with roles and order, and in a different way. It's not supposedly supposed to be so emotional, but it's a different bonding that we have from being born into a family. No matter what, if we don't like our family, we deny them. It's a soul movement, we call it, where that needs to be acknowledged, or that needs to be taken in. So we can talk about that on another podcast, but just very briefly about constellation work in the families.
Yeah, one more, I guess, question on the topic is because I know personally, and I know I've seen this with a lot of other, again, maybe more analytical people, is the first time I did a constellation, my first reaction is like, this is BS, right? It's like, we must be just acting, or we're, I don't know, making stuff up. And then when you experience it and do it, it is by far the most like life-changing tool I have ever used in my life. It has been the most seismic changes in my life have come from doing this methodology. I have nothing but the most like deep respect and love for this. And so my one just kind of question, and as I said, next episode we'll go a little bit deeper, is like, I know, for instance, when we did one of many constellations in my family, one of the topics that came up is that somewhere in my kind of male line, there may have been an injustice that happened. And we're talking about like maybe 100 years ago, or even more, where this 150 years ago, where something might have occurred. So I'm just curious, like, because there's been like, I don't know, 5, 6 men where this thing that happened has been carried through the line. It has this information has been transmitted down to me from something that happened 150 years ago. Um, how does this happen? Like, how is it that, like, without speaking about it, we're kind of transmitting uh, this information that something possibly happened in a system 100 years ago?
What gets transmitted is the pain and the burden that someone was mistreated unjust has been so held on, and the families take that on, and that starts to be impregnated into the system. And then later generations will somehow take on that we've had a big injustice. And the healing is to go back into looking at the facts at that time to bring in respect to that person. So, in a way, the family takes on not bringing back respect to that person, where probably I don't know where, probably outside there's been some injustice. So there's been like, now we have to carry this injustice, but bringing respect and honor back in those generations so they can feel whole again, and that does not have to be carried down into the system. When we're working with family constellations, we're just looking at facts. We're not looking for stories. We're not trying to change anything. We're just bringing to light what are movements that help support insight and a balance to the system. Some people call it healing, but we try not to do the healing. We try to give respect to those systems. So we may be connected. It's part of life. We're an individual, but we're connected to systems. We are connected to our family system, where we came from, and we're connected to social systems, and they all have certain morphic fields, and we need to respect them and understand there's certain guiding principles and laws. The same in business, which on another podcast is about the wisdom of success, the laws of success, and they do have these guiding principles and there's certain laws of balance that create balance, that create imbalance, why there's losses and there gains, and they can be passed over in generations, even through businesses, when we don't understand when things have been misguided or gone unconscious. So I give total respect to the methodology of family constellation, and it was brought to light by Bert Helena. And I have worked with him and done many trainings with also for many years with lots of wonderful people who really do serve the work of constellation and what it has brought into the world to look at systems. It's a way to support, to look at the whole. And also, it grew for me to share this in my work, because you cannot deny that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So this is why, it's beautiful to use it as a methodology and respect it.
Yeah, if I could share one again, personal story example, and then I'll say something about systems, and then we're going to transition away from this topic for now. So my whole life, I had debilitating migraines, and it's something that at least once or twice a week, I would be on the floor, somewhere between, excruciating pain, couldn't take in light, wanted to vomit or would vomit, and they would last for hours. And I really just couldn't move. And it's something that my mom has. I've since found out that her father, my grandfather, had it. And there was a point where we took a look at a family constellation of my mother's side, and we took a look at my mom's side was living in modern day Turkey, and that a lot of my family members during the war, and I'm not going to go into the whole story and the whole background, but there was a lot of them died, and we did take a look at this, and it gave me an opportunity to grieve and respect my family members that we never acknowledged. And what I didn't go into this process looking for this outcome, but since the day we did that, I have never had a migraine ever again. And it's something that I went from having once or twice a week to, in the last 2-3 years, I haven't had a single one. And I didn't know that was going to happen. I didn't go to solve my migraines. You can't just go to solve like a symptom, but I reflect back on that. I'm still very touched because in processing the grief and the pain that was somehow transmuted down my family line, and this almost like I'm like inheriting this migraine thing when I think about it now. Um, actually, it was some representation somehow, I don't know, interconnected with this event. And
Mm,
it's one of the many, many, many gifts I've gotten from doing this work with Family Constellation. Is like, yeah, now I don't have migraines, which is pretty sweet, and something healed in me. And also, I was able to really acknowledge my family members who I never got to meet, and it was a very
yeah.
beautiful process. And so, as
Mm,
you mentioned, Chrisana, like we operate in systems, and I will give a little bit of a plug for the next episode. So in the next episode, we're going to be talking about how these systems show up, especially in our work environment. And if you're a leader or CEO, I think this is truly, I believe from the bottom of my heart, the most cutting edge kind of technology, relational technology you can implement in your business is looking at how systems interact with each other, and to do it in a fun, experiential way and not overthink it. Because a lot of the academics right now are starting to talk for the first time about systems thinking. It's like the new hot topic in organizational psychology. But if you look at the models that are being produced, like I would, want to bash my head in. It's really like you have to train yourself to do 49 different types of cognitive processes and thinking styles. And I'm like, no, like, come talk to Kursana, because there's an amazing way that within like an hour or two, you could see a map of the systems that operate at work. And I would go further to say, a lot of conflict resolution, relational technologies we've developed are incredible. Like one that I particularly like is nonviolent communication, but it doesn't go far enough because a lot of our models and technologies, relational technologies for conflict resolution, are about one-on-one conflict resolution. So it's like I have
mm,
a problem with someone else, but I've been in businesses where I've been talking to leaders and they say, the entire marketing department wants to kill the entire sales department. There's like 10,000 people ready to march and kill another 10,000 people. To me, I love nonviolent communication, but that a thing of like it's just a problem between two people. It's not always the case. Sometimes there's an issue in the system,
yes.
and there's something in the field that needs to actually be addressed. And then all the 10,000, 20,000 people will actually find their place very quickly without doing tons of trainings and communication workshops. And so that's why we're very excited to do our next episode where we talk a little bit more about that.
Mm, yes. Beautiful.
And so I have one kind of last question, Chrisana, and then we're going to do our wrap up. Um, I'm going to try to give us permission to be as kind of out there and esoteric and just have fun, right? In this space of intuition.
Yeah.
And one thing that, I've known you now for years, I've worked with you for years, and, there's many things that are pleasantly surprising about you. Like, for instance, how you've lived like somehow 10,000 lives within this one
Yes.
lifetime. But one of the things that like blows my mind all these years later are your powers of intuition, where sometimes some of the insights you come up with by just observing and feeling, like blow me so away and blow our clients away to a point where like no one understands what's happening or how you came to the conclusion, but it's always spot on in scary specificity and is always the most important thing for them to do to shift what they're going through. And so I'm wondering, when we think, like, I have a feeling that there's still some like intuitive powers that you have that I haven't even seen ever, because I'm always discovering new things about you. So I just at this point assume there's like layers of intuitive magic that you probably still have that I'll never get to see. And so the kind of question I have for you is, what is, like, if we were to embrace our full potential, our full powers, our full magic as humans, what is the magic and power of our intuition? What capacities do we have on this planet?
Hmm. The full magic and the full power of your intuition and the capacity you have, anyone will have, will come to its peak when you really are in tune with you're not self-serving. You understand it's in the service of life and in the service of continuing life on this planet or on humanity. The more you become more intuitive, the more you know you don't know. And this is a lot because I'm a meditator as well. And it doesn't mean I'm a meditator and I tell everyone I meditate every day. Yeah, it's part of my life to consciousness and awareness. Consciousness, awareness, love, and consciousness. They're you'll hear me again and again. There's no other way. It's like there's once, it's once awareness, you cultivate some awareness and intuition comes in, you have a lot of responsibility. You can't be as unconscious anymore. It's like, things are there in front of you that you have to make very conscious choices. So the more intuition you grows, the more of awareness also grows in you. So it's an art and it's an inner journey. And this did not happen in 5 years in me. This happened like many, 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 many years of also working and working on myself. But it's not a work, it's really self-inquiry. And that's my dedication to myself and to life, and to be authentic and to be honest. And I guess you probably won't know all of it because I would say it's very private. I'm a very social person, but also those things, it's a very inner knowing. And even when I know I'm in it, it's I'm learning a lot more how to frame it rationally for people, but it's an inner knowing. That's all I can say.
Beautiful. And I hope you'll receive the compliment. For me, as like a guy coming from a very heady place, it comes off like a superpower, at times almost like a magic. What your self inquiry has led you to, I know, has supported thousands of people. I know you've opened so many wellness, health and wellness kind of centers, meditation centers around the world. I know that you're one of the most sought after therapists in the world, because and I know thousands of people know how much you are really in service of life and in for others, and that this self-inquiry has brought these incredible gifts that we are all so lucky to benefit from. And it's what yeah, as a friend, I'm really so happy every day that I know you. As a business partner in 3P Coaching and Solution, I'm so happy that we get to utilize your incredible skills and gifts. Um, it's such a rich, rewarding part of my life to walk side by side with you. So thank you for all you are and everything you do, because it's really, for me, it's magic still. And I don't want to ever pull the veil too far back, because I would like to keep it feeling like magic. It gives me a nice feeling.
Thank you, Mino. I really fully received that in my heart. And yeah, the veil is intact. I'm quite self in my self possession with that. So thank you. And I really enjoy the path that we're sharing with 3 Peak and with the personal growth journey and just the friendliness. It's really beautiful. So thank you as well. It's a joy. And what I'm doing in this life and anything I share, it's my passion. So it's incredible passion to share this.
And so I'll do a little summary, and then we'll give our final thought for the day. We talked, of course, about intuition and just some of the ranging from our personal kind of intuition and how it can serve us in our own sense of direction and instinct and keeping us safe and leading a direction in life. We talked about how it applies to gathering and sensing information, whether it's moments of danger or there are moments where we actually can be tapping into other people and what they're feeling. We can understand really complex things like culture, which is how millions of people have trillions of interactions on a daily basis, and you can understand it by dropping into Paris for an afternoon. And we talked about the morphic field. So, this field, this sense of connection, systems that unite us all, and things that we can actually hone and develop, both for something like sport, right, which is fun and really productive, but it's also something that can be a healing mechanism when we talk about families. And in the next episode, we're talking about how it can also be used for success in business. And
Yeah.
so I loved this episode, and we bring it to a conclusion. What are some of any final thoughts, Chrisana, you might have for us?
Final thoughts. Experiencing, sensing, feeling. So we're doing this podcast. It's a Friday here, so I don't know when viewers or listeners are going to hear this, but just remember, have time to go out and experience nature, experience outside, get to know your energetic signature of nature around your neighborhood, have that experience, sense into it, and feel you have a better connection of tapping more intuitively yourself through that. That's what I leave for everybody.
For me, I already mentioned it throughout this episode, but as a child, for whatever reason, at some point I chose to cut off pieces of my intuition, or not connect with my intuition as much. I went very much into my head, very analytical. That served me in some capacities, but where it did not serve me is I was not able to make healthy choices to lead my life forward. And when I started to open back up to my intuition through the work that Chrisana was sharing, in personal development, I came to make really, really good life choices. And so it's as simple as that is for me, my life has gone from one of kind of misery and struggle and depression and whatever, all the stuff I was subjecting myself to one of flourishing, joy, love, enjoyment. And at every turn, when I've made decisions based on clear, clean, rooted intuition, it's been the best decisions of my life every single time. And every time I wanted to be with others, what's kept me safe and kept me in healthy relating is my intuition. What's helped me heal things in my family that have been happening for maybe hundreds of years is my intuition. It's this kind of ability to connect and understand the information my ancestors passed on to me for me to heal within myself. Every great thing in my life has come through that inner sense of feeling, sensing, knowing. And so until the rest of my days, I will probably be out here speaking about my own experience, transformation I went through, and for my fellow kind of analytical folks that, data is incredible. We'll continue to collect it. We'll continue to analyze it. But there's this whole other way of being that I think is much more harmonious to our essence and our biology. And having both is really fucking cool. Like, it's to have both the intuition and the analysis and marry them and bring them into one harmonic place is an amazing place to live life from. And so, one last plug. Next episode is definitely one. Don't miss it. It's going to be all about CEOs and business success and how to take the concepts of intuition into the business world in a productive, healthy way. And so, with that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.